So, Trussonomics, the name and invention that we've all, I think, got to come to at least know or to terms with. This is the new buzzword that I think will very much define this entire Truss administration for some time to come. And what a lot of people have been pointing out very, very recently is that even more so than Boris Johnson, Truss has surrounded herself with the hardcore of hardcore Brexiteers, the Brexit ultras, as some people have been dubbing them very recently. And go back to 2016. What were all these Brexiteers saying, or what have they even been saying since 2016? That this doing Brexit just doesn't mean sort of getting rid of deregulations. It means a complete and utter change in the way that we shape our economy. Something that in 2016 was not even brought up. But it gets even worse because not only has Truss surrounded herself with these Brexit ultras, but she has brought people in from various different think tanks who were the most hardcore of hardcore Brexit supporting think tanks. One in particular, the Taxpayers Alliance. Of course, they don't tell you who their particular members are, nor even how you can join said alliance if you would like to join there's such an organization. But obviously notorious for their ultreme Brexit stance, but also very much so for pushing charter cities. And very, very worrying that one of their, shall we say, men at the top is indeed one of her closest advisors. And ultimately, are what are or have been what is pushing Trussonomics. So, before we go into today's little article we've got for you, please do remember to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page and a one-off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can, well, buy me coffee. And as always, thank you very much to all those people who do help and support the channel that way. So let's quickly run over to today's story over on Zello Street. The title of Why Trussonomics Has Already Failed. Why someone out there on the right have wondered, why have the markets reacted with such contempt for the mini budget and put forward by Kersey Kretang on behalf of Liz Truss, who has somehow been elevated to the rank of Prime Minister? The economics, after all, had the impeccable pedigree of the finest think tanks in SW1 behind it. So what was not to like? And this is really the key point, that these were, and the think tanks were behind a lot of what Truss has been pushing. So make no mistake, we will probably be hearing a lot more, I think, from these think tanks, because certainly in the aftermath on Conservative Home, indeed, they got some, should we say, what think tanks had been saying about the budget. And of course, the Taxpayers Alliance, I think there was what was the other one? The IEA as well had popped up and said, "Oh my God, this is absolutely fantastic." But of course, they were the only ones who were sort of praising this budget. Everyone else was like, "Yeah, what have you done here?" It's no wonder the taxpayer, the markets are reacting with such, well, confused looks, I suppose would be the point. But anyway, back to it. And that is where all those credulous right-wingers went wrong. Those advising Mrs. Truss with bodies like the so-called Taxpayers Alliance and the IEA are not think tanks. They are astroturfed lobby groups with the modus operandi including to get their copy in papers as means of raising their public profile. By the way they do this, they should ring the alarm bells. Sleight of hand, logical leaps, and downright dishonesty, combined with economic illiteracy, are all deployed by these groups. They are never discovered by the right-wing press that laps up their propaganda. But the markets can see through the facade in no time at all. So here are some examples. The TPA published a quote-unquote report in 2009 called The Taxpayer-Funded Lobbying, claiming that the then Brown government was paying firms to lobby itself. However, there was no proof that these payments were for, and these firms concerned did these things other than lobbying, On behalf of being called out for the logical leap, the TA then tried to lie their way out of it. They ultimately failed. No matter, they came back with the TPA with the claim that speed cameras, far from reducing accidents and casualties, actually made matters worse. This was sleight of hand that was covered up by a regression analysis of the Crow test. And however, the claims only worked if all speed cameras that were introduced on the same date of 1991, and of course, most did not appear until after the turn of the millennium. And then, of course, we come to the HS2 project, where both the TPA and the IEE included in the economic illiteracy in order to dupe the press. The TPA was first claiming that the HS2 would need Crossrail 2 to be built in order to disperse the crowds of the punters trying to use the trains when they arrived at Euston. Therefore, they claimed the cost of Crossrail 2 should be added to HS2 to the cost-benefit analysis. The IEA then followed the Crossrail 2 to the additional cross line. But the double project of the cost to 10 billion to 20 billion to make the numbers just that bit scarier. But neither of these groups actually carried over the projected cost of Crossrail 2, hence the economic illiteracy. The projects were dependent on one another is not the problem. It is the depiction that it is. The IEA now has a foursquare behind what it is called Trussonomics, which is why everything is unveiling. Logical leaps, sleight of hand, and deceptive use of statistical tool analysis. Selective use of figures to dishonestly load the cost-benefit analysis, then being prepared to spin and lie about it in any way possible. This does not impress the markets. On the other hand, trying to justify even screwing over the poor in order to bring the rich just a bit more dosh, says is fair, does not impress the public. So getting on your propaganda in the papers, barking at the birth at the Daily Politics, the Question Time, the Kunzberg Show, and even the Preston Show or Sky News equivalent is one thing, but the real world is quite another. Shame on the broadcasters for performing these people, and God help us for the rest of us being softened up for these swinging spending cuts that are on our way. And there are some serious spending cuts on the way. Like I say, in order to pay for Trussonomics, is what we've been hearing very recently, all government departments are now expected to make, well, not spending cuts, because obviously that sounds quite bad. They're now expected to make efficiency savings. You know, it doesn't matter what you call it, they are spending cuts. And at a time when the public servants and civil servants are already under enormous pressure from having to expand the civil service to do more because of, we've done Brexit, so now there's more work for us to do, hence why the civil service has expanded, to now the arbitrary values that have been put on them, like Jacob Rees-Mogg saying, oh, we should reduce the size of the civil service back to pre-2016 levels. It just doesn't make sense, because as we've expressed many, many times before, these people just do not understand their very own departments that they are in charge of, which should be incredibly alarming for everyone out there. But expect certainly to see more of the Taxpayer Alliance and even the IEA mentioned quite a bit, because they are certainly two of the biggest cheerleaders and, well, of Trussonomics. So expect to see a lot of experts, so say, mysteriously tagged to this. And it would be interesting to see if anyone actually ever calls them out for their connection to these groups. But we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But as always, thank you very much for watching. And of course, we'll see you all next time.